There are some issues in Washington that are complicated because Congress makes them complicated. And then there are issues that involve legitimate trade-offs, regional differences, and reasonable people reaching different conclusions. The future of daylight savings time falls into the second category. But after years of talking and debating and introducing bills and failing to complete the job, the United States House of Representatives has finally acted. On July 14th, 2026, the House passed the Sunshine Protection Act, silly name, by a vote of 308 to 117. That was not by some narrow party line vote. It was an overwhelming bipartisan vote to stop changing the clocks twice a year and make daylight saving time the year-round national standard. The bill has not become law yet. It must still pass the U.S. Senate, where its future remains uncertain because it's the freaking Senate, right? Florida Senator Rick Scott has been pushing the Senate version of the Sunshine Protection Act, and President Trump has expressed support for ending the clock changes. But until the Senate acts and the President signs the legislation, America will continue springing forward and falling back, and springing forward and falling back. Now, we here in Florida have been waiting for Congress since 2018. That year, our state government approved permanent daylight saving time. Florida made its preference clear, but states currently cannot simply place themselves on a permanent daylight saving time without congressional authorization. A state may exempt itself from daylight savings time, however, and remain on standard time, as Arizona and Hawaii largely do. Okay, but Florida cannot move in the opposite direction without Washington, D.C. changing the federal law for some weird reason. So before we endorse this proposal, however, we should understand exactly what Congress is considering. Permanent daylight savings time does not create additional sunlight, because we can't create additional sunlight, right? The number of daylight hours remain exactly the same. And I want to tell people, the number of daylight hours will remain exactly the same. Government can't manufacture sunshine. Although I'm pretty certain that somebody in Washington would hold a press conference and attempt to take credit for it. Anyway, what government can do is determine where those daylight hours appear on the clock. Under permanent daylight saving time, we would no longer move our clocks backward in November. Winter sunrises would occur approximately an hour later by the clock. But winter sunsets would also occur approximately an hour later. We're not choosing between daylight and darkness. We're deciding whether more of the darkness should fall during hours in the morning or during the late afternoon and early evening. Now, the strongest arguments for locking the clock consistently, changing the clock twice a year is an unnecessary disruption, and we continue largely because we have grown accustomed to it. It's one of those things we do because we've always done it. In fact, that's something that has been done for decades. Does not mean that it made any sense, right? The spring change is especially disruptive because we lose an hour of sleep. Adults go to work tired, children go to school tired, families must adjust bedtime routines, meal schedules, medication schedules, church service appointments, all this stuff, right? Then, just when everybody's become accustomed to it, November comes, and the government moves the clock again. We gain the hour of sleep back, but suddenly darkness begins falling in the late afternoon. People leave work in the dark. Children finish practices and after-school activities in the dark. The evening seems to disappear before it has properly begun. I was working for Grassfire Nation doing election coverage in 2012, and we were in Norfolk, Virginia. And I guess I experienced it when I was a kid, but I'd never experienced it when I was an adult. It was like 4:30 in the afternoon, and it was getting dark. Now, it had been a cloudy, rainy day, but it was getting dark at 4:30 in the afternoon. I was like, what the hell is going on here? And people were like, what? I said, it's getting dark. So by 5 o'clock, it was dark. By 5 p.m., it was dark. I'm like, I don't like this. This is some sort of weird witchcraft. I got to get out of here. I got to go back to Florida. And because Florida is just a little bit more west, then it got darker a little later. So there's no compelling reason to impose that disruption on nearly the entire country twice a year. There's no reason to do it. Now, the second argument for permanent daylight savings time is quality of life, especially here. Most Americans do not begin their recreational lives at sunrise. Okay? They begin them after those recreational hours after work and after school. That's when families walk their neighborhoods, children play outside, people exercise, well, not me, visit parks, work in their yards, run errands, eat at restaurants, and participate in community activities. In addition, an hour of evening daylight gives people more usable time. It does not lengthen the day, but it places the available daylight where many people can actually use it. Now, that argument is particularly strong here in the Freedom State of Florida. Our economy and our way of lives are closely connected to outdoor activity. Florida depends heavily upon tourism, restaurants, theme parks, boating, fishing, golf, beaches, youth sports, outdoor events, and hospitality business. Evening daylight is economically useful. A visitor who has another hour of daylight may stay at the beach longer, visit an attraction, play another 9 holes, eat at an outdoor restaurant, rent a boat, walk through a shopping district, or spend time at a local event. Florida businesses benefit when people remain active longer into the evening. Now, later winter sunsets also provide families with additional time together after work and school. Parents may be more willing to take their children to a park when it's still light outside. Seniors who are uncomfortable with driving in the dark may have more time to complete errands. People trying to become healthier may find it easier to walk or exercise outdoors before darkness arrives. A few years, my wife was, actually we were both walking a lot. And this time of year, when it got dark, in the evening, too soon, it was like, what we have to do? Do we have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go walking? Or can we walk after she gets off work? Well, as it turned out, it was like, no, it's too dark to walk after you get off work. So walking, sort of slowed down a lot. As a matter of fact, it ground to a halt because after work, it was just too dark. Okay. To tie to that, there's a reasonable public safety argument for placing more daylight hours during the evening. More people are traveling the late afternoon and early evening than during the early morning. Roads are crowded with workers coming home, parents collecting kids, students leaving school activities, shoppers running errands, and families heading to dinner. So better visibility during those hours may reduce certain types of accidents and make pedestrians and cyclists easier to see. Permanent daylight savings time would not eliminate traffic accidents, of course not, and supporters should not pretend that they would. But daylight has the greatest practical value when the largest number of people are moving around. Right? Makes sense? Supporters sometimes argue that daylight savings time substantially reduces energy consumption. Well, frankly, that claim should be approached very, very carefully. Daylight saving time was historically promoted as a method of saving electricity because people would use less artificial lighting during the evening. Modern life, however, is different. Air conditioning, computers, televisions, commercial refrigeration, electronic devices, 24-hour businesses, and a changing work patterns have complicated the energy equation. Any nationwide energy savings are probably modest and may vary considerably by region. Florida should not support permanent daylight savings time because politicians promised it would dramatically lower everyone's electric bill. This is not why you support it. That case is not strong enough. The stronger argument is that the consistency is valuable and evening daylight is more useful to Floridians and businesses. We must take now we got to take the opposition seriously because opponents of permanent daylight savings time, they do have legitimate concerns. The strongest objection is a dark winter morning. If daylight saving time becomes permanent, the sun will rise 1 hour later during the winter than it does under the standard time. Children may be waiting for school buses in the darkness. Construction workers, farmers, delivery drivers, emergency personnel, and other early shift workers may begin their day before sunrise. Now, that problem would be especially serious in northern states and communities located near the western edge of a time zone. The U.S. is a large country. The effect of permanent daylight saving time in Florida would not be identical to the effect of like in North Dakota or Maine or Michigan or Montana. Now, members of Congress from those states are not being reasonable when they raise not being unreasonable when they raise concerns about extremely late winter sunrises. We should not dismiss their experience just because we here in Florida, have different circumstances. History also gives our opponents a powerful argument. The U.S. attempted year-round daylight saving time during an energy crisis back in 1970. The policy was initially popular. Americans liked the idea of avoiding clock changes and maintaining later sunsets. And then winter came. Parents became angry about children traveling to school in darkness. People discovered that supporting permanent daylight saving time during the summer was different from experiencing it in the darkest part of the winter. Public support collapsed, and Congress ended the experiment early. That history does not automatically prove that permanent daylight saving time would fail today. School schedules, transportation systems, workplace practices, lighting technology, and American lifestyle have all changed. But anyone promoting this legislation should also acknowledge that the country has attempted something similar before and reversed course. Okay, the medical and sleep science objections must also be considered honestly. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine supports ending the twice-yearly clock changes, but it favors permanent standard time rather than permanent daylight saving time. Morning sunlight helps regulate the human body's internal clock. Exposure to light early in the day helps people wake up and become alert. Additional evening light can delay the release of melatonin and make it harder for some people to fall asleep. Children and teenagers may be especially affected because many already struggle to get enough sleep. That distinction is important. Evidence showing that changing clocks is disruptive does not automatically prove that permanent daylight saving time is the healthiest solution. Now, ending clock changes and deciding where to lock the clock are two separate questions. Medical experts are reasonably agree that switching should stop, while disagreeing with those of us who prefer later evening daylight. And I prefer later evening daylight. There could also be administrative complications. Airlines, railroads, broadcasters, financial markets, computer systems, international businesses, and transportation companies coordinate schedules across state and national borders. Changing permanent national time standards require careful planning. Computer systems must be updated. So, transportation schedules must be rewritten. And international connections must be coordinated. So, businesses need enough notice to adjust. These are not reasons to preserve an irrational system forever, though. But Congress should provide a reasonable implementation period rather than announcing a major change at the last minute. So we all have basically three basic choices. We can continue changing the clocks twice a year. We can adopt permanent standard time, or we can adopt permanent daylight saving time. The first choice is by far the worst one. It preserves the disruption while satisfying neither side. Americans continue to lose sleep, adjust schedules, resetting clocks, complaining about the system every spring and fall. Congress then introduces another bill, holds another hearing, issues another press release, and accomplishes what they always accomplish. Nada. The real argument is no longer whether we should lock the clock. The real argument is where should we lock it? For the entire country, I understand why some lawmakers remain cautious. I do. Northern states experience winter daylight differently than Florida. Like I told you when I was in Virginia. Man, oh man. States on opposite edges of the same time zone can have substantially different sunrise and sunset times. School schedules, commuting parents, agricultural needs, and the local economies also vary, all right? So Congress has to recognize all those differences. States that conclude permanent standard time works best for their residents should retain a legal path to choose it. And in this bill, they do. Federalism exists because one national preference doesn't always fit 50 different states equally well. But here, in the sunshine freedom state of Florida, the answer is much clearer. Florida is a southern state with an outdoor economy. We are a tourism-based economy and lifestyle that benefits from the later evening daylight. Our restaurants, attractions, beaches, parks, sports leagues, fishing businesses, golf courses, and entertainment districts benefit when people have more daylight after work and school. Yes, permanent daylight savings time would give Florida darker winter mornings. School districts may need to examine bus routes, lighting, crossing guards, and start times. Let me stop here. Start times. I don't know why people don't think schools could just start an hour later. Instead of having your babies out there at 7 in the morning, wait till the sun comes up. Have them out there at 8. There you go. And even if they're in school, if they don't get out at 2:30, they get out at 3:30. They still have daylight. This doesn't seem hard. Employers with early shifts may need additional safety measures. Get some light. Those concerns deserve practical answers rather than political slogans. But darkness does not disappear under standard time either. It just moves. Under the present system, students often leave practices, rehearsals, tutoring sessions, after-school programs, and part-time jobs after sunset. It's dark. Workers drive home in the dark. Families lose usable evening time. Standard time does not protect everybody from darkness. It places darkness at a different point in the day. Yes, people waiting on the bus or whatever in school in daylight savings time, it's dark. It is. But I remember, even here, leaving school when I was a sophomore in high school and getting home and having a half hour of light before it got dark. It's 6 o'clock, 6:30. It's dark. When I got out of high school as a sophomore, we got out at 5 o'clock. We were on double sessions, 5 o'clock. So there weren't many hours of daylight left, especially in the wintertime. So it just moves to darkness. So what we have to decide which placement of daylight produces the greatest benefit to the greatest number of residents, workers, visitors, families, and businesses. And for Florida, evening daylight is a lot more valuable. Listen, Congress has discussed this long enough. Florida approved permanent daylight saving time in 2018. The Senate passed the Sunshine Protection Act in 2022, but the House did not complete the process. We were this close. Now the House has passed the legislation overwhelmingly, and the responsibility has now returned to the Senate. Senators should debate the concerns honestly and forthright. They should consider children traveling to school, the medical evidence favoring standard time, regional differences, and the experience of the 1970s. They should also provide enough implementation time for transportation systems and businesses to prepare. But after considering those concerns, the Senate should act. Here at the Morning Report, we endorse locking the clock on permanent daylight saving time in Florida. We support ending the twice-yearly time change. We support the Sunshine Protection Act, provided states that retain an appropriate option to remain on permanent standard time when that's better for them. I'm not trying to get you to change. You can stay on standard time if you want to, if that works better for you. I think it's booty, but do you, boo, as they say. I think Florida has already made our choice. Keep the additional evening daylight, give families more usable time and work after school, support Florida tourism and restaurants, attractions and small businesses. Stop forcing people to rearrange their lives twice every year merely because government has failed to finish the job. Now, the policy is not perfect. Nothing is. And yes, there are real trade-offs. Just like Thomas Sowell said, there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs, right? And we should be honest about them. But the benefits of permanent daylight savings time outweigh the disadvantages for the Sunshine State. The House has acted. Now the Senate must stop running out the clock. Bring the bill to the floor, debate it, fight it out, pass it, send it to the president. We here have been waiting since 2018. Lock the clock. Keep the sun. My name is Willie Lawson. This is the Morning Report. Morning Report is a production of FightBackMedia.com, 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 and FightBackMediaTV.com. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.